Welcome to Exiles, a Gospel of Mark podcast. We're coming to you from Grace Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where we're taking what we learn about ancient truths and the person of Jesus into our everyday life. You can check out whoisgrace.com/Mark for the sermon and resources that we're using for our conversation today. Thanks for joining us for Season 2, second episode of Season 2. We're here today. There's 4 of us here. We'll introduce ourselves. Sarah is sick, so she's not with us.
Boo.
Boo. So we had to downgrade for a guest, but it's fine. I'm Danielle. I've been working at Grace in some capacity since I'm gonna skip the year. Go ahead. For a long time.
I'm downgrade Derek.
Yep.
There we go. I like that. DD. Yeah. DD. Yeah. So I've been here a while too, 30 years or so, as one of the pastors. Good to be here. This is fun.
It's exciting.
Good week. Yeah.
I'm Mike. I'm one of the pastors at Grace. Been here for actually just hit 2 years a few weeks ago. So that's exciting. The first year is
ribbon. There's usually
do
ribbons.
I get a ribbon?
Yeah.
Do I get
yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Metal.
We ran out.
The first year was wild, and the second year is like, so Easter comes every year. Okay, like I'm ready for it this time.
Those holidays, man, they just keep coming.
Christmas
Did you just
again?
get saved 2 years ago as well? Easter comes every year.
It was way more chill before, and now I got to do stuff.
Oh my gosh.
I'm Steven, and I've been here for 4 years.
Great. Cool.
Sorry, that was really short.
Yours aren't usually short, so I wasn't ready for it. So how's everyone's? So this will air later, but how's everyone's Valentine's Day? And also, Mike, if you have any thoughts on Valentine's Day, please feel free to give them.
I mean, obviously,
Mike Chrisman.
The machine has created this way to just take money out of my wallet, and I love my wife dearly. So we went to Bar Ronin.
Wow.
We had a gift card, so that was good. But
never mind.
Bar Ronin's good, and some topped up with Dairy Queen. But
Does that count though? Like if somebody gave you a gift card, and then you
That
take
depends
your
on your
wife
relationship.
with the gift card.
it's the middle ground. So then I'm not complaining about the man trying to take money out of my wallet because it's a gift card, and
I don't even know what to say about
So
this.
she asked somebody to give the gift card so you wouldn't complain on Valentine's Day? Is that what happened? Okay.
There's a
Wait,
way
you
to.
said Bar Ronin and then Dairy Queen?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's
They
an
go
interesting
together.
dichotomy.
They go together? How about you call Dan
It's
Kern
the
and
whole.
ask him?
Yeah,
Dan,
right.
if you could pick any dessert to follow your meal.
Peanut butter parfait.
Oh, those are good. Yeah.
See?
Well, I mean, okay.
I'm a
What
straight
else?
Blizzard guy for sure.
Are you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of blizzard?
I like the peanut. No, I don't like peanut M&Ms at all. I just like the M&M ones. Sorry, I don't know why I said.
Okay.
M&Ms
Now,
are-
will you?
M&M.
So McFlurry versus Blizzard.
No.
Is there a difference?
They're not even the same.
Yeah,
There's a big difference.
yeah.
Huge difference. Blech.
I guess.
Little
Which
known-
one are you blocking to?
The McFlurry.
Yeah, okay,
It
good,
tastes like
good.
plastic.
We're on the
Because
same
that
page.
ice cream and
let's-
M&M is different than the
spoon
other ice cream
that you're going to eat
M&M.
off of. Let's hook it on the machine. And I don't know. The whole thing is just like.
That was fascinating when it first came out. though.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, that's kind of good. That's clever.
But then you're like, okay, yeah.
Hey, Dairy Queen trick, if you don't know. There is a... Oh, geez, I just forgot it. Darn
no.
it. I had a good trick.
I'll talk about my favorite Blizzard. Mine is
What is your favorite blizzard? 'Cause I don't know.
Butterfinger
I mean, whatever.
I just
or
remembered.
Reese Cup. Go ahead.
So there is a blizzard flavor that's not on the menu that is the best one
Whoa.
by far.
Which
is
one are you
it?
going to say?
Peanut butter crunch.
What's that?
It is the little. It's the vanilla blizzard with peanut butter in it. So it's like peanut butter ice creamish
Okay.
kind of thing, with those little chocolate nub things that they put on the ice cream cakes, like
crunch.
the crunch in the ice cream cake mixed in.
Wow.
By far the best blizzard. And if you just say peanut butter crunch blizzard, they all know what that
They
means.
hook you up?
They hook you up.
Wow. You guys.
There you go. See?
Just when you think we're not changing lives. Do you know what I mean?
One life at
Did
a
we
time.
think that?
One Blizzard
That we're
at a
not?
time.
Yes. No. That's awesome. That's a good tip.
There you go.
I don't want to be prideful here, but I did work at Dairy Queen.
What a way to set something up. I don't want to be prideful.
I worked at Dairy Queen in high school.
Yeah.
Right.
And and this was
Do
legitimately
you know
my
what peanut
title.
butter crunch is?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
it wasn't so like Georgia mud fudge. There's all kinds of like
What?
different ones. Oh yeah.
What?
Don't ever say that to me
Cocoa
again.
fudge, pecan, brownie pieces. That's
Oh,
one
that
of my.
sounds good.
But it's
Okay.
not on the list. There's a whole secret kind of.
Oh, anyway,
In any case, my legitimate title was cake master.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I made cakes
Cake?
with the best of them.
Cake
And
master?
I was the cake master.
Okay. And you still are.
I could
Now that you've mentioned
if I
it.
had what I needed, I could put you an ice cream cake. Oh man,
Next round of business cards.
Cake master.
Mike Christman.
pastor
Cake
slash
master.
cake
Were you
master.
stingy with the middle stuff?
Humble cake master.
The best part was when you're making it and then oh no, a piece broke off.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
You
that
can't
is
put it in the
best.
cake
Oh,
and you don't want to throw it out.
shit.
Yeah. So I just cleaned it up.
Wow.
Just want to point you out, Proverbs 16:18 says, pride goeth before destruction. So, humble
But I
cake
said
master.
I wasn't being prideful.
Right.
So it
But usually
negates-
that's a tip off.
Does that
Cancels
mean-
out that scripture.
Yeah.
Okay, guys,
oh, it
let's
does?
talk-
Yeah, it
Oh,
does.
great.
It does.
Awesome.
Yeah. As long as
Speaking
you
Started
of
with
which-
Valentine's and really just
Speaking of scripture, hey, so we're chapter 5 is what we're starting with today. The story of Jesus healing the man with the demon, right? Am I? Yes.
Yeah.
So let's start with just like general kind of thoughts. Anything stick out before we go kind of step by step?
My first initial thought is just how great a job George Lippert did with the animation. Probably nobody else noticed as he's not scripturally related at all, but shout out to him. Like if you go watch the bumper. Go watch the bumper, okay? If you haven't seen the video version of it, go watch the bumper. It's
Good to
really
know.
cool. And the pose of the demoniac in the bumper,
Yeah.
George actually posed it and then drew
Oh, cool.
around himself, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Sorry, the reason I was
Anyway,
laughing
wait
is
to
I
see
thought
it.
you were going to say what a good job Derek did, and you said George, and I was like, oh my, I don't know, that made me laugh. Anyway, I thought it was a suck up moment, but it wasn't.
No, not
Just shout out
Yeah,
to
George.
George.
Yeah, George has been awesome with
George
these.
is the man.
I love the nerd in me, like the kind of symbolic, the numerology, the symbols of the numbers that you kind of pulled out with like the 7 and the 7 nations, the 12 and the 12 tribes, and
Yeah, it was cool.
And with the feeding of the 4,000, just connecting some of that, like that's some of the cool parts of when you like. It's great to like read a narrative in big chunks, but it's also good to like get deep, and that was one of the things where I was, oh, that's cool. It's like Jesus knew what he was doing or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the intentionality of narrative is it's designed so that you see that stuff.
Right.
Or you at least appreciate the culture, the initial readers, might have caught on. Those I love that too.
That's cool. I think sometimes it's easy to, like the narrative part of things, it's easy to forget that. Like, it would be just like today watching a really well-written movie or something, where it's like they're connecting all these dots on purpose creatively. Yeah, that's an easy thing to forget when you're like, you think you're just kind of
2,000 years removed.
Yeah, and like
Right.
studying, quote unquote, a
We've
book.
got to do a little bit extra work to be able to appreciate
Sure.
the original audience for that. But so when you do and you connect it, it's really cool. I love it.
And one of those other moments is just this whole the other side.
Yes.
The idea that when Jesus said, "Hey, let's go to the other side," that phrase meant something, and I think the disciples all knew that's not somewhere where we should go.
Yeah, no.
And I even again, some of this is my imagination, but imagining the disciples going across the sea and the storm comes up and they're like, "See, we should not be
We totally
going
would
to
have
the
done
other
that in
side."
our culture.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's a sign.
It's a sign.
Turn
It's a
around and
sign.
sucker
Yeah,
around.
it's not meant to be.
Jesus, we knew you were wrong.
Yeah, it's not meant to be. Would
Then
you
the
listen
demon
to
comes
us?
out, you're like,
Right.
see, I
See?
knew it.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
look who we're
doubling
greedy
down.
by.
Yeah,
We just had a storm. Now we're greedy by this guy.
Right,
this is just going to get better and better.
So it's just like confirming their biases.
Yeah,
and Jesus
totally.
just keeps trucking right through them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like that part of it.
Speaking of the other side, practically, I thought that was a good shout too, just talking about today's society and just how we kind of, well, not kind of, but we can vilify the other side. What have you guys seen? How have you seen that play out, either personally or people around you? Any good examples?
Everywhere.
Yeah, fair.
But I think politics is probably the one that comes to mind the quickest right now, especially because
Heating up.
November's coming. So, but like just
It's like winter is coming.
it's for real. Like brace
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
I mean, everything gets boiled down to this. It's black or white. It's two camps, and you're either you're trash or you're on the right side, and it's exhausting. But it's the exact same principle alive and well in our culture today.
Yeah. This is super weird. I get spices from this one place that I really like, and I got an email, like confirmation from an order that had like this, I'm not kidding you, it was this manifesto that was just about, I won't even say which side or anything, but like this political side is evil, wrong. This is how you need to like expel these people from your lives who believe this. I'm buying
From a
ground
spice.
pepper.
What, was it
Calm
on
down.
your receipt or something?
It was like a electronic.
confirmation? Wow.
And then like the email that came, it was like, here's your receipt. And then it was like this paragraph, and then you clicked. So I was like, I clicked it, and it was like, whoa, just this like newsletter manifesto about how wrong
Wow.
this one political side is and how horrible they're like tearing our country apart and stuff. And I'm like, all I wanted was pepper.
All I wanted was pepper.
And like, you can do what you want with your business, like whatever, it's fine. But like, it was just such a weird, unexpected.
Yeah.
So it's gone to spices, guys. The spices have gone.
Can't even buy spices.
No, spices are not polarized.
Well, we just got done watching Inventing Anna. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Anna Delvey story.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild.
Oh, when she like pretended to be rich and
Yeah.
swindled
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah.
Super fascinating
Mm-hmm.
documentary. But what was very evident, and again, so fill me in as Americans, obviously I came into the country when I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, the political agendas of the the British and the Scottish political agendas. And I don't ever remember this happening, at least growing up in my culture. But it struck me how many politically charged comments were in that docuseries, but more specifically, and again, it doesn't matter where you landed it, but more specifically because Trump was the president at the time, more specifically attacking this one man. And I just thought, like, is that typical of American culture to, like, from a media standpoint, to attack presidents? Or, like, when we moved into this new, like, COVID era, like, did we graduate? Like, is that not typical? Is that typical?
Yeah, I think it's a new thing.
It's a new thing?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I mean, in our lifetime, for sure.
For sure.
You
Yeah.
know, I think it has never been like this. Now, looking back at history, I think there are times when it was extremely polarized. They were doing crazy illegal things to get their side elected and all that. This is not a new thing, but I think in the kind of mainstream conversation of normal Americans, that to me in our lifetime is a new thing. I mean,
Journalism shifting.
and journalism, just literally taking sides, and it's hard to wade through. Are you getting? It's all propaganda from one side or the other,
Right.
Yeah, right.
Depending on which source you go, and to try to wade through all of that. I just think that's a new thing. I think I said in here, there was a time when everybody was getting the same news.
Exactly.
Everybody was watching the same 3 channels. Everybody was reading the same newspapers. And now it's like that's so curated that it's just feeding this divide, that the news that I see on my feed is different from the news that you see on your feed. And it's intended to fire us up, and it's so interesting, like going back to your original question, like I was just seeing a video the other day of I think she was with the Rolling Stone, a magazine writer, and she said she had made a comment to somebody about, it was about COVID, it was during COVID, and said something like she didn't think it was good for kids that we had locked down schools or kept the kids out of schools for so long. Yeah. So she just had an opinion about that one very specific issue of, like, my kid is struggling because not being in school. And she said the response that she got from somebody said, I didn't think you loved Trump. Like, that was the leap.
That's the frustrating thing.
Like, she had an opinion about one subject, and it instantly got categorized in a side.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the thing I think that is so unique. Is
Unique
that, like,
now, yeah.
we all have 100 opinions about 100 different
Correct,
things.
yeah.
It's like, and not all of them fit into a neat category.
Right.
But the way people have started to hear that just goes, oh, you're that or you're that,
Right.
because you just said that.
Yeah.
And it's a weird time.
Yeah.
It feels just like a battle that Satan is winning.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to,
Yeah. No.
but for real, like to be able to, like, isolate people in their opinions and cut people off from even, like, hearing each other out. If you can, like, step back and, like, clock it when it's happening, you can see it. Like, it's a strategy. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a war strategy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
To divide.
Yeah.
But the nice thing, not the nice thing, but I get the comforting thing maybe to a degree is the fact that ancient Israel was, it's a new thing for us. It's not a new thing in human history. This was like this exact polarization was happening in ancient Israel. If you look at Jonah was sent to Nineveh.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go because he knew God was going to save them, and they were the other. The disciples didn't even want to cross the lake. And so, but if Jesus, like, we read it in Mark and we're like, that's ridiculous. But then we have about 1,000 ways to go, like, do that exact same thing in our culture today. And if Jesus shook that up, we should expect him to shake it up now.
Yeah.
And he will, and we're going to get shaken along with it, just like the disciples in the boat. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and I think it forces us to wrestle with this idea that when the Holy Spirit comes to you and puts his arm around your shoulder and says, let's go to the other side.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, we have to respond to that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, are we going to respond like the disciples, or are we going to, you know, because we can read about their failure, or are we going to go, okay, I'm going to let's go and let's see what happens, and let's watch God heal somebody that he's not supposed to heal.
Yeah.
Or let's watch God, you know, use somebody that he's not supposed to use, or save somebody that I don't think he should save.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenging call to us in this divided world that we live in right now, is to go, we have to be the ones going to the other side. We can't just sit here and go, oh, see, everybody's divided and look how horrible it is when you just categorize people and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we our job is not just to narrate that that reality.
Right,
Our job is to actually go, all right, who are the other for me, and what is God calling me to do for them?
And maybe just a disclaimer, going to the other side doesn't mean casting out a demon or healing or, like, you know, throwing like the gospel in someone's face. So Emily, my wife, is like, she's an artist and she's getting involved in the art scene. I mean, we have had people over to our house who could be considered an other. Like, she's gone and taken food to, she's engaged. She's not like throwing Jesus into everything. She's not shying away from it, but nor is she like shoving it in people's face. She's just, come to my house, let's have lunch.
Yeah.
Like, that can be, that simple act can be part of going to the other.
Yes. Yeah, and when I think of, like, someone who's a savvy follower, Emily's a person that I think of for sure, like someone who can navigate and engage the culture around her for sure. She's great at that. Yeah, and I guess, like, another example that we have right now is just this, that Super Bowl commercial that just came out. What is the name of it?
He Gets Us.
Oh, yeah, He Gets Us.
Yeah.
Even just seeing that, it's like a division and then a subdivision and a subdivision again, just among Christians, instead of, like, letting it inspire you to do what that was showing. Let's just fight about it instead.
It's easier.
It's wild. It's very easy to fight.
You just throw stones and point fingers.
Very easy. Okay. Another thing I wanted to maybe talk about is, Pastor Derek, you had said something about, I'm not going to get the words right, but the inventor of fear being Satan, and how he traffics in fear. Thoughts on that? I might be the only one that has thoughts on that.
No, go ahead.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I had never thought before about fear being a divider. Like, I could see how it could be like a destroyer, like crippling, like in that way. But it was just a new way to think about it for me. But it makes sense now that I've thought about it, just like it keeps you at arm's length from something that you should maybe be jumping into or whatever. But I just thought it was an interesting, I don't know why, it just stuck out to me.
Yeah, and I think I think that so when you look at, we're talking about some of the divides in our country, and you look at what takes it from just being, I feel like when I was younger, these kind of things were like policy disputes.
Yeah.
You know, so like we all agree on the problem. The solution, the left and the right came to different conclusions on what the solution to the problem should be. And now you look at some of these things and it's so loaded with fear. And so just like the fuel of the thing is fear. And so we just go, the immigration, the southern border, okay? And the issue is not like, hey, we've got like an illegal immigration problem. Let's figure out ways to solve it. It's like one side is like, these are murderers and rapists, and every person coming across is going to destroy our country and blow us up and all that. So there's like that. It's just like loaded with fear. And the other side, like, if we close the borders, it means we're all these isms and
we're going to be racist, and misogynist,
and all the stuff. And so it's like it's just, I feel like it's just loaded with this fear. And amplified to a certain, again, you look at the abortion debate, like all of these things, it's like going, oh man, all women's rights are being destroyed and taken away, and we're going to be the Handmaid's Tale, and it just, every issue it feels like is just instead of going, no, actually there's a thing here that we should probably solve. It's just layered and layered and layered with so much fear that just, I feel like, amplifies all of the division to a point where it becomes hard to even talk about stuff. And Satan is the author of all of that. One of the words used in Revelation to describe Satan is the word category. He's the categorizer.
Oh my gosh.
And so he just categorizes us. He ranks us, files us, separates us, and he puts us into categories and would love to keep us there. Because I feel like unity is one of the greatest weapons we have against him.
Yeah. I found in the past that a good exercise, or maybe not a good exercise, helpful, well, if it's helpful, it might be good, right? But a helpful exercise is to just pan what you're actually afraid of.
Yeah.
Like when those situations come up, I think we sell our soul to the fear. And then we just hang out there.
Just charge it,
Rather than going, okay, what am I actually afraid of? Let's do some more. And we might not even get it right first. Sometimes we have to go to counseling to dig a little bit deeper, but just to pan it. Like, okay, I feel like I'm afraid of X. I feel like I'm afraid of Y. And then take that fear to God. Sovereign God, I recognize your position, your power, your authority. Here's what I'm afraid of right now. I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I'm bringing it to you because that's all I know what to do. I sound like Sarah McCusker right now, right?
Yeah, you're doing it.
Wow,
there we go.
job.
There you go. Shout out,
Finally. Finally.
Okay, Jesus, we need to talk.
We love you, Sarah.
We do love you, and miss you. But anyway, I found that to be a helpful exercise.
That's cool.
Just to write it down.
Yeah.
Write it down and then give it to God.
Yeah.
And allow him to show
I think
up.
the other positive side of it, if we're to put a positive spin on the fear thing, is that it does help us with empathy when we come to the other, recognizing that maybe on the stuff that we don't agree on, underneath their opposition is actually fear. And if we can get to that of like, what are you actually afraid of? It helps us with being able to empathize and have good conversation, because if we know that their strong reaction was actually motivated not by hate but by fear, it puts us in a different posture to be able to have good conversations.
Oh, what a fascinating exercise that might be. Not to take the fear just to God, but also to take it to that person as you enter that conversation. I know you believe this. Here's what I'm afraid of.
Yes.
That's
even just to
super
admit
vulnerable.
it. Right.
Like both parties.
Right.
What are you afraid of about my views? What am I afraid of about
That's
your
great,
views? Like how disarming.
That would be a
that
very
changes
interesting
changes
conversation.
the tone.
Or even just to think, why would what fear might be beneath the surface of that opposition? Like, it's humanizing.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of the dehumanization, I think, that's being peddled. It's humanizing.
Yeah.
Leads to empathy, leads to conversation, leads to being able to actually go across in the other.
Yeah, because if you're just thinking automatically, hate, if that's the filter, you're not going to even want to engage with that person. You're not going to want to have a conversation with them. It is going to keep you separated from them. But yeah, I love that. If you can get to the fear, the root.
I mean, one
of
the exercises, I think, even for Christians, and it may be a little, I don't know, weird to say this, but for Christians, I think when people are not Christians or don't hold to Christian values, and when Christians are pushing for, we need Christians running everything, and we need, like, to me, one of the exercises I think is helpful to walk Christians through is to go, okay, that sounds great to you, it sounds very empowering to you or whatever, but to somebody who's not kind of in that frame of mind, like, imagine that, and again, forgive me, but like, there's this whole idea of like Islam and jihad and like this running a government through a religion. And to imagine being a Christian in a nation that was full force going, we need to get all Muslims in office. We need to have a Muslim-run government. And it's easy for us to think of ourselves in the majority, but it disarms it when you put yourself in the minority and go, how would I feel if I knew that the people in charge were radically different in the way that they thought the world should work than me?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it feels a little threatening for my family and for others to go, oh, wow. And so I think just to go, whether it's LGBTQ people and others that are like, don't agree, and they go, what if all the Christians are in charge? What does that mean for me? There's just some underlying fear there that I think is important to acknowledge and recognize. Again, whether it's true or not, it's to put yourself in the minority, I think helps.
Yeah, it does.
To think about what are the implications for me if X, Y, or Z happened.
And I would add to that and say, especially in light of the reality that it feels like Western evangelicalism is just crumbling at the seams.
Yeah.
So what flavor are you going to get? And I don't even mean that to be a divisive statement. I think it's just a real statement right now.
It's true.
Like, if you are the minority, for us, it'd be great if all the Christians were in charge. But that's not necessarily true.
No, it's not.
Correct.
At this point in the state of, our camps, if
Because
you will.
what version of Christian are we talking about?
Right.
Correct.
What are we
yeah.
actually
I
getting?
don't want some of those Christians to be in charge.
Exactly.
And it's a real thought.
When you think about it, there's validity to some of the fear. Like we as
There
the
absolutely
church,
is.
those of us in like all the different flavors, like we've not done a great job in many different ways, and so some of that fear is very valid.
That's right.
And I think, and that's kind of what you were saying, Stephen, be able to like bridge that and be able to kind of have that moment of vulnerability to hopefully create the space to have the conversation, to be able to be honest, empathetic. But some of the fear that the others that we think is unfounded, boy, there's some validity to it.
Yeah, because you can just slap Jesus onto anything and justify just about anything you do. And that's the world we live in, is everybody thinks Jesus is on their side. And, and then now I can do whatever I want. That's terrifying for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if we can just dial up the empathy, each one of us, like 10%, so you can get to, like you're saying, Mike, get to a place of conversation, I think that's a huge win with one person. That's a good personal goal. I'm going to try to do that.
I feel like it's just such a forgotten skill as well. Like to
Conversate?
Yeah.
Yeah, like civil
like to have
discourse.
a conversation
Yeah.
and then at the end go, oh, we don't agree with each other.
Yeah.
That's all. Let's keep bowling.
Keep going. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever,
Yeah.
Like,
Bowling.
I don't know where bowling came from. I went bowling the other day, actually.
Did you?
That's probably why it's in my mind. But
I'd like to see you in those shoes.
Oh yeah, it looks good. It looks good. You're welcome. And Danielle doesn't agree. Look, and we're still at the same table.
There's still respect.
I don't know about respect.
I respect all of you.
That was said with disdain.
Well, because
Because I have to.
it's true, though. Yes, that's a good point. Okay, let's talk about Legion for a minute. That's my opener for that question.
Let's talk about Legion for a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, where are you going with it?
That's it. That is where I'm going with it.
That's so open-ended.
I
It's
know.
hard to answer.
I wanted to see where it goes. I mean, I was captivated by the symbolism, and even just then going all the way where you said, like, all these things are showing that they're all afraid of Jesus, because all these things that you went over. And I don't know, just a reminder again of even what you talked about in the boat. Like, the disciples were like, at the end of it, still afraid, because they're like, okay, that was crazy. Who is this? Like, if that was scary and he took care of that, what are we dealing with here? You know, in a awe, fear kind of way. Anyway.
And they're still a couple chapters away from actually like realizing that Jesus is the Son of God.
Which is insane, but yeah.
I'll just summarize for those listening, and then you guys can comment. But the whole legion thing is, Jesus cast demons out of this guy, and they identify. He says, "What's your name?" And they identify themselves as Legion. They say, "We are Legion because we are many." But there was also a legion of Roman soldiers that were stationed, and again, the Romans were the enemy, the occupying
the other.
And those groups of soldiers were also called legions. And so there's this idea that when Jesus cast out the demons, the legions sent them into a herd of pigs. It was also this just declaration that he has authority and power over all the forces that are opposing him, whether those are human or demonic or spiritual or natural, that he has power and authority over all.
Yeah.
And that then the unit had like a boar's head, and like a pig's head was the symbol of the unit sent into the pigs, and the pigs all died. Like, it was super cool. Like, I feel like I'm like a crazy person, but like, string on a wall, like, look at all the ways they're all. Like,
How many pigs,
Beautiful mind.
How many pigs' heads do you have on that wall?
Oh my gosh.
So for me, it reminds me of last week as well, and the fear that then the disciples had. And it just, the phrase that runs through my head right now is like, Jesus is the only one that can manage your fear, right? I mean, the fear that exists in this world remains in this world unless it's given to Jesus. And it's not like the fear goes away, but when the fear is directed towards Jesus, he actually does something with it.
Wow.
And it's beneficial. When we give our fear to anything else, or when we give into our fear, it's never beneficial outside of actually giving it to Jesus. And there's this faith that's simmering and growing inside of these guys that continue to not get it over and over and over and over again. In a sense in which that's true in our life as well. But, we see the fear redirecting, but Jesus is the only one that actually does something with that fear, which I think is important to acknowledge too.
and the fear is qualitatively different. To be fearful of other things is to be scared of, to shy away from the fear of the Lord. Not only do we direct it at Jesus, but it becomes one of like awe, like fear of the Lord, awe and respect. And it's not as scared of Jesus and what he's going to do, because he already went to the cross and he did everything for us. And now there's awe and respect there. So it's...
I agree with that to an extent, but the initial reaction may not necessarily be that. It's like, I was terrified of the storm. I'm terrified of this guy. I'm terrified of being at the other side. And this guy's managing it. So now I still have the same fear.
Yeah, he's getting like more and more powerful before my eyes,
Right.
Yeah.
But what he's doing with that is actually good. So it's like I still have the same fear. I'm now afraid of this guy. But I'm looking at this guy, and what he's doing is actually good. It's actually beneficial. It's actually helpful. So I feel like there's the initial response to that fear may still be the same. Like, I'm terrified of this guy. But his track record continues to prove over and over again that I'll take your fear and I'll actually, I'll do good with it.
That's where fear becomes faith.
Yeah,
when
that's
you see,
where fear then becomes
good.
awe and reverence, and like, this guy's more powerful than what I've ever seen in my whole life. But yet what he does with that,
that's really good,
is for the betterment of the whole, for the whole world.
It's great. Great insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he meets fear, again, I say this, and I don't, obviously I'm in counseling, so I don't disagree, but he doesn't meet their fear with counseling. He meets their fear by demonstrations of his power.
Right.
And so he's showing them again and again, I'm more powerful than these things that you're afraid of. And so it connects the dots to going, this is why we can have faith in him. Yeah. This is why we believe in him. This is why we follow him. This is why we trust him, devote our lives to him, is because he's more powerful than all the things we're afraid of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about it like a father analogy, right? I want my kids to know that I'm strong and I'm capable, and if somebody breaks into my house, I'm going to protect my family. Like, I want them to know that my dad is able to protect me, but dad is never going to hurt me.
Right.
And that's like,
Yeah, it's
you know, I'm afraid of that situation, but I'm putting my fear in my dad because I know that what my dad's going to do with my fear is he's actually going to protect me. So I see that I see that interplay happening here just as the disciple. And that's what faith is, right? It's like realizing who this guy is and going, I'm going to choose to trust him.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to trust him because I know that he's more powerful than anything that's thrown at him at this point. In fact, he's walking into situations that seem impossible, and he's proving himself over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think then that trust, you know, I think all of these can be squishy topics, faith and trust, and we talk about these things until we actually get to rubber meets the road stuff like, well, okay, he's proven that he's strong. What does it mean to have faith in him? What does it mean to trust him? It means that I trust that he's right about stuff.
Yeah, that's good, clarifying.
And so when he's right about stuff, to trust him in that stuff means that what he says about marriage, I'm going to do. Because I trust him.
Yeah.
And what he says about sexuality, I'm going to do. And what he says about parenting, I'm going to do. And what he says about how to treat the poor, I'm going to do. When he says things about stuff, he's right about stuff.
Yeah.
And trust and faith then moves from this ethereal, vibe to he's right about stuff, so I'm going to do what he says because I trust him.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's fascinating because even in Mark, there's some healings that the disciples witness. That's fun. Who doesn't like a good healing, right? Okay, the withered hand is made better, and so that's good. But then all of a sudden, that fear, I guess, because now they're in a boat in a storm.
Yeah.
Now they're in a foreign country, and there's this crazy dude inhabited by thousands of demons. So all of a sudden, I guess, the rubber meets the road moment. There's a slight track record, but then all of a sudden, all right, it's time for this fear to be placed in the right way and faith to it's time to really hold on to it. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, the opposition is rising, and they're having to put themselves there with him. Yeah.
And I love that Jesus isn't just about the big stuff, that it's little obedience. And so he's still not at the place where the disciples are going out and casting out their own demons. He's at the place where he's feeding the 5,000 and going, now you guys go around and pick up the leftovers. You take these baskets, go around and pick up the leftovers. That's your job.
Yeah.
I'm doing the miracle. I'm doing the healing. I'm still doing all the stuff. But you start to obey. You start to do these little things.
Yeah, it's good.
And I think that hopefully that's encouraging to somebody listening.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have to be this huge obedience. That sometimes Jesus just wants you to take a basket around and collect up some leftovers.
That's
get in the
good.
boat.
Oh, yeah, get in the boat.
Just come with me.
Right.
Just get in the boat.
Yeah. Exactly. Or weather the storm.
Yeah. Just hang on.
Just hang on.
Weather
on
the
with
storm.
me.
Don't give up. Weather the storm.
It's like it's like Jesus is constantly doing like temperature checks of trust.
Right. That's great.
Because he, and it's like, okay, they're not quite there yet. They're not.
Where are we at, guys? I still don't get it.
Like maybe Jesus had his schedule. He's like, we should have been in the boat 2 weeks ago, but we had to go do this because they weren't quite ready. I don't know. Obviously, that's extra biblical, but
Is it?
I don't know. We're a month late, and we should have been in the Decapolis a while ago, guys. Come
Oh
on.
my gosh. It took a long time for you to pick up those scraps. Now
I'm still stuck on who doesn't like a good healing.
I know. Who does? That's true.
It's just a good way to say it.
That's true. That's a T-shirt. I want to fast forward to the end of the story where he asks, for two reasons. As you spoke about, this is surrounding our new vision for kind of the next 10 or 11 years. But also, I think it's just it's a good story, and it's a good way to set up. I think the most practical thing we can talk about today is helping people tell their story. So, So when they leave, this demoniac asks if he can go with them, and Jesus says no. And I think on the page you can be like, what? Like, take more people with you. You're going to have problems. You need more bodies, But he said no. And then fast forward, what happens when they come back? Want to pick that up?
Yeah, sure. So he doesn't just say no. He says no, and I want you to go back to your friends and family and tell them what God has done for you.
Yeah.
Basically, tell them that He had mercy on you. And so he leaves them, not just leaves them, but leaves them to tell his story.
Yeah.
And when Jesus comes back, 3-4 chapters later, into the Decapolis after more ministry, all of a sudden there's the feeding of the 4,000, which tells us that the temperature, speaking of the temperature of that area has turned toward an openness to Jesus now that wasn't there before. When they arrived the first time, it was one crazy person. Now there's 10,000, including women and children. So, and if you, again, extra biblically kind of extrapolate and go, that was what changed. Well, what changed in those 4 chapters was that one guy told his story.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden there's this like curiosity, at least, about Jesus that would invite an entire crowd to come to him. And it's just a reminder of how important one person telling their story can be for the work of God in the world.
What are some practical steps we could give people, how to kind of start that process of telling your story, getting your story together? It doesn't need to look like some big...
Yeah. And I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
It's, we read these stories. The man was demonically possessed by a legion of demons.
Must have been a great story.
Well, I don't have that, Wasn't addicted to heroin,
Yeah.
All those things. I mean, those are big stories. And I feel like, we all grew up in Christianity within the 90s, and I feel like that was always the tension, right? Whenever I was in youth group or, leading something at youth group, who has the best story? And I felt like those kids that grew up in church, just sat in the crowd the whole time.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I don't have a story to tell. I think it's just important to recognize that you have to be honest about your struggles. I think that's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
I think there's tremendous power in just seeing and hearing about somebody who professes Christ struggle in their life.
Right.
Because I think we try to lead with the strong thought, the good word, the right answer. And I think honestly sometimes that actually puts people off. Yeah. Like, let Jesus do that work. And why don't we just come to the table with honesty? Yeah. And so, if you're a bank teller at Northwest Bank, like, what does it look like? I don't know.
Sponsor.
Yes, shout out. What does it look like for you to hop in there and just talk about you're with those people in close environments. What does it look like for you just to be like, hey, man, I've been struggling with anxiety, or, I've been feeling depressed for the last, and talk about how Jesus is entering those spaces with you. Because those are things that people can't deny. I mean, we said it around here, like the most powerful thing that you have is your story. And so let's just be honest about it. I feel like sometimes we have to do the work that Jesus is actually better at doing than us. So let Jesus do that work, and let's just be honest about how Jesus is meeting us where we are. But anyway,
and I think what that is, you're building relational credibility to be able to have the permission to share your story. No one would probably cut you off and be like, I don't want to hear that, but they're going to yada yada. If you just come at them and you don't even know them, and the first thing you do is just start blabbing about Jesus, like, you need permission, you need relational capital. So there are some people with amazing stories that have overcome addictions and like all that. Like, if you're telling that story to someone who's gone through that, there is immediate credibility there. I have the same, if you have a big story, there's immediate credibility by just sharing what you've been through. If you don't have and I'm using air quotes, big story, I think you need to intentionally build some of that relational credibility as you go about or before you go about telling your story. And I think that you can have conversations with people, the others, without throwing Jesus down in the first, like, have them over for dinner, have a conversation with them. There's ways to build credibility. Be honest with some of the things you're walking through that very well could relate to what they're walking through. I just think the story is the best way to do it, which is what you were saying. It's not holding the flatboards and banging the drums and getting all, trying to go approach people there's a time and a place, sure, but when you build that credibility and you have that vulnerability in your story, oh man, that
Yeah.
just 99 times out of 100, that's going to go further in sharing the love of Jesus than anything else.
Yeah, and I think we're all saying this. I don't want to say it too strongly, but I want to be clear. Like when we say story, as you were sort of saying, Stephen, for a lot of us who grew up in the church especially, that comes with connotations that we need to kind of pull away. Like when we say
good.
tell your story, I'm not saying go share the gospel with
Right.
someone
That's good.
with your story of when you first encountered Jesus when you were 13. Right. That's part of the very long narrative of your life. Totally valid, totally part of what you went through. But what we're saying is your story is whatever God is doing in your life
In that
right
moment.
now.
Yeah.
Or that is very closely related to whatever that person is dealing with. It's just how you normally talk to people. But then the next level of being able to connect the dots for them of this is how I'm dealing with anxiety. Like, yes, I'm super anxious about this thing, this procedure, this whatever, blah, blah, blah. Here's how I'm trying to like think about it. Help me think about it. What would you do? You know, asking questions. But it's way more like in the moment
Organic.
than I think we've made it previously, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think that, I like to say, we need to keep our story current. Because for some people, like you said, you're raised in the church, or I accepted Jesus when I was 8.
Right.
That doesn't connect to your coworker who's, when they're going, tell me your story. Well, I accepted Jesus when I was 8. Well, that has no like real life connection to that person. So
Yeah.
I think keeping our story current, like you're saying,
That's good.
and going, here's how I'm living this out. I had this health scare, and here's how I'm so thankful for my faith, because here's how my faith allowed me to walk through that. Or my wife and I got in an argument last night, and it sucked because we haven't been that mad at each other in a long time. But you know what? Here's what happened. And again, we don't have to put a nice bow on everything either. Like there's this happy, magical way that this ended, but I do think that kind of that current, what people want to know is, does a relationship with
Yes.
Jesus make a difference in a human life
Right.
right now?
Right.
That's
Is it
what they
worth
want to
it?
know.
Yep, absolutely.
And that may not look like the 4 spiritual laws right out of the gates. It may not, Romans Road or whatever. It may just look like you going, here's the difference Jesus is making in my life right now. And like you said, that doesn't come on the first conversation. Like there's some equity that needs to be built up before
Probably
that's going
shouldn't come on the
to
first
shouldn't come up. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And for some people, that open door will come within 2 weeks. For some people, it'll come within 2 years, and if you try to shoehorn Jesus into some conversation, they're gonna be like, no way.
Yeah.
The big X comes up and goes, I don't want to, that you're freaking me out. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So, there's a savvy, there's
Yeah.
a spiritual savvy to it as well. But,
And that's why I love with our new values, why we put compassionate with storyteller,
Yeah.
savvy with follower, because there's more to it than just like these marching orders that we have. There's just so much nuance and so much freedom to have the nuance. It might be 2 years, it might be no years.
Right.
Might be never.
Right.
It might be in 10 years when you've never seen them again. They come in contact with someone that reminds them of something that you
Yes.
said
Yep.
Right.
a decade ago.
Yeah.
It's these small steps of obedience, which is our discipleship question anyway. So it's ordinary hero, right? Is the theme that's came up this week, and that is the discipleship question. What is my next small step of obedience right now? And I think for us and for those listening to this, it's probably who needs to hear my story, or who do I need to engage with
Yeah.
moving forward in some relational way.
what's my other side?
That's my other side. Yeah,
down.
that's good. But we're at our time. So I would like to do one episode just about story. Sure, we'll do it. All right.
I like
Was
how you
that
had the
you
conversation with yourself.
Yeah, was that
Yeah.
you asking yourself and then giving yourself permission?
Yeah, and I also told Stephen this happening.
Yeah, we weren't involved in that.
No,
It was just
go to whoisgrace.com/Mark for resources, and you can also submit a question or let us know how you're feeling about the podcast, etc. Next week we'll be doing more.
Well, if you have any Scottish terms that you want the definition of, throw that down there.
Yeah,
too.
put it in the form. Whoisgrace.com/Mark. Okay, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Best outro ever.